Welcome back to Blue Square Security, the first episode of 2024. Today's episode is a culmination of all the guests that we had in 2023. At the end of each 23 episode, we asked all guests the same question, which was, if you were just given the role of CISO at a fictional company, what's the first thing that you do? Whether that's implementation, bringing somebody new on, whatever it is, what's the first thing that you do? And we saw a couple of trends. The first one was, let's get an assessment in place. Let's get a good understanding of the technology that we have. The second trend that we saw was, I want to get to understand my people better. What professionals do I have in place? But the one thing that we did not hear, a little bit of insight that we kind of noticed after the fact, was not one of these security professionals said, well, I'm going to find the problem and I'm going to go fix it. No one said that we're going to go turn a wrench. And then the other theme was that there was a sympathy for the role of the CISO. I think we all understand that that role is a difficult role, but it's also, at times a very lonely role because they're kind of the head of the dragon or the head of the snake, right? So this is those 11 answers in succession, kind of a rapid fire. And we're going to come up with a new question for 2024 and hopefully do a similar episode at the end of this year. So if you're a repeat listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're a new listener, thank you for tuning in. But here are those 11 answers. Thanks so much and Happy New Year. So the last question is kind of a fun question that we plan to ask every guest. And
Sure.
It requires a little bit of imagination on your part. So imagine that you are a new CISO at the organization of your choice, of your dreams, however you want to phrase that. You've just landed the CISO role at your dream job. What is the first move, the first change, the first implementation that you're gonna put your stake in the ground as Byron's first move?
Honestly, I don't know that I'm prepared to make a move just yet. I think I'm going to have to spend a few months and understand.
You need just 6 months.
Great. I know. Well, I'm going to have to assess kind of where we're at and where the gaps are. I think my first move would really be to bring on a partner, right, to help me figure that out. I mean, honestly, I don't see any other way around it, right? You're in that position. I'm going to be tasked with so many things, right, and have to liaise with so many people. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to break, fix, or go turn wrenches to fix anything anyway, right? I'm just not.
Yeah.
And no C-level in that position should be, right? If you are, then you're not that C-level, right? Or you're in the so. For me, that would be the first thing, right?
That's a great answer, and it plays to your strengths too.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is, every business has dark spots in the corner, right? And those are the things that keep CISOs up at night, right? What did I miss? What did my guys miss? What are the known unknowns? Because there's always known unknowns, right? And listen, I don't care if you went through Georgia Tech cybersecurity, executive management, PhD, Bruce Lee, CISSP. There's always gaps because guess what? Russia and China are making sure there is.
And if somebody tells you that they've got all those gaps covered, you better second guess,
they're a liar.
guess, or run for the
They're
hills.
straight up a liar. There's no way. Right? I mean, let's face it. And I say that laughingly, but in reality, there's just no way. There's no way. There's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be openings because you're always going to be in reaction mode against these state actors, right? And so it's just a matter of how quickly can you identify it, recover, and put yourself in a better position so that you're not reacting when it happens again. I mean, that's the big picture strategy right there, right?
Oh, that's a great answer.
So you're the new CISO at your dream company, whatever that might be. What's your first move, a change, implementation? And you have 30 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. Take your time.
First move, I fly everyone in if I could, or a team's meeting to get to know everybody. I can typically, with 30 years in the industry, have about a 10-minute conversation with everybody and find out who they are in their life, identify their talents. I've got a pretty good leadership meter, so I understand when someone knows what they're doing and they do not, and how to put them in a position to win. That's it. My people. How fast can I figure out? First, safeguard them, because the first thing is, oh, my guy's gonna bring his own people in and I'm gonna get fired. So probably not.
Diminish
I
the
don't know.
fear.
Yeah, so manage fear and get related with my people, find out who they are. Some of these people may have been there 30 years, 27 years, 42 years, 8 years. They know the company better than I do. That's it. Team meeting, some one-on-ones, because they get to know my people. And then what's documented, so I know my networks, I know my tool sets, I know my vendors. And I can go through and say, all right, 90 days, we're gonna have the next meeting because now I'm educated.
Right.
And then let's get buy-in, and here's the things I like us to implement.
I find I don't know if the psychology is the right word, but I find the answer to this question from last week, where Byron represents a very, very large book of partners, and his answer to this question was, well, I'd probably bring in a partner to, help address XYZ. And then we talked to you, and you've mentioned your slogan, one team, a couple of times. And your answer is, well, I want to get to know my people one-on-one, diminish fear. And it just goes to, reinforce kind of what your methodology to your business is. And I find it fascinating that those answers coincide with both people's strong suits. So that's a fascinating answer.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what? I'm a technologist, so I may wear the hat of the CEO of my company, but I know the tech, so I want to know that my people know the tech. And then we've selected partners and tool sets based on not the best price or who was taking me out for the nicest meals, but what was the best solution. Because at the end of the day, I want work-life balance too. So if I can implement a tool set that's going to work and with a team that's going to love to do it and inspired, we all have an easy job. We just maintain the screens at that point. We look at IT just differently. I always tell my people, we need to treat our job as if we're the desk or chair they sit in. And when I first asked that question, they understand. I said, look, when someone came into their desk today, they put their coffee cup down on the desk. They put their purse away or their stuff down. They didn't say, man, I wonder if that desk is going to hold my coffee cup. It was just a tool of doing their business. They didn't think, boy, I hope that chair is going to hold me today. But people have to do that with their computer. Oh, I bet I can't print this week. Man, my password. So we try to take all that away. We want your technology to look like the desk. You didn't think that desk may not hold my cup of coffee, or the cup I poured my coffee into might not hold my coffee. You just do that routine. So we try to take the complication out of it, and we want your technology experience to be the same. It's not always that way, but most companies try to put themselves first. Let me show you this great technology thing we did. We try to make your technology get out of the way, and you just can do your job and enjoy yourself. Just like you didn't spill coffee out of your mug because you know it's holding your coffee in it. So a holistically a different approach.
That's a good analogy, and I'll probably look at my desk a little bit differently tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
The final fun question. Here we go. So you're a new CISO you pick the company, large company. What's the first move on your part? Any changes? What implementation? Very first thing you do?
Man, you are really setting me up for success. So I do executive coaching for a bunch of people who are new CISOs or want to be CISOs. So what I would do is the same thing that I tell them. A friend of mine just started as the new CISO at a really big, well-known brand. And I said, hey, I don't want you to do anything except walk around, find out who the movers and shakers are and how they get their bonuses. Don't configure anything, don't spend any money, don't even make any suggestions for the first 90 days. You are on a listening tour and you need to know what everybody cares about so that after the 90 days, you're going to give your boss a strategic roadmap that says, based on what I've learned in the first 90 days, this is what I think I'm going to do for the next 12 months. And as I gather more information, we'll make adjustments and adjust our fire. But Given my background in the military, whenever you do a permanent change in station and you show up as a old soldier in a new location, you are never accepted if you come in with your ideas before you understand the situation that you're dealing with. All the people who were there before you know what the heck is going on, and you cannot be the new kid on the block saying what you're going to do and how you're going to make everything great, and you don't understand what's going on or why it exists the way it is. And so every CISO who asks me what I think about how they're going to start a new opportunity, assess, evaluate, and understand are probably the three most important things you can do in the first 90 days. And that applies to people, process, and technology. You need to understand what are the corporate practices. And then if you have a suggestion later about how to improve it, great. But you really need to understand what is the practice and why is it that way. You need to understand who all the people are. We once did a digital transformation way back in the day, going from WordPress to Microsoft Word, and almost caused a riot because all of the executive assistants had memorized all the shortcuts in Word Perfect and didn't want to have to relearn anything. Their work being slower affected all the executives and nobody was happy. You really need to understand what exists and why it exists. So even though Microsoft Word saved a lot of money and Word Perfect was more expensive, and this is like back in 1996, 97, long time ago, but cost savings is not always the primary driver. You need to understand what is the primary driver in the company, and you understand that by going around and talking to people and developing an understanding. I often recommend that new CISOs do their own security assessment. I would never trust the last penetration test or the last assessment that somebody else did because I had nothing to do with it. And the situation may have changed from the time the assessment or the penetration test was done, but I would facilitate a detailed examination and learn everything that I possibly can about the environment that I'm serving in before I start to suggest what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and how much money I need to spend. The other thing, and most CISOs don't do this, but I was going to be a CFO before I ended up in technology. So I have a reasonably strong accounting background, but it's extremely important to understand the financial health of the company that you're working in. And so if the company doesn't have $10 million for this awesome strategic roadmap that you have, it makes a lot of sense to not ask for something that doesn't exist. And I try to be an overachiever. If I ever worked as a CISO again, full time for a company instead of running my company, I would try not to spend, I would spend the least money I possibly could in the first year so that I could justify all of the spending. Hey, this was the budget that I inherited. I operated within the budget. I spent as little as possible to produce the best outcome. And now I have evidence about the spending that needs to take place, which is going to endear you to the business people because I didn't come in trying to spend all the money in the budget. I tried to understand the situation before I spent, and I only spent if it was absolutely necessary.
That's awesome. Great answer.
Yes, these are the 12 personal. No, I'm just kidding. It's just one question. Um, so yeah, we've asked this to all of our guests. So just kind of a fun question, but you're a new CISO at your dream company, whatever that is. What is the first move? What would you change? What would you implement?
Ugh, that is a loaded question, man.
Asking a sales guy to step into a CISO role, I guess, is the first part of it
You
being
could, hey, you could go back to your consulting days and say it depends.
Well, no, I'm gonna steal a page out of the Jim Eckert playbook. He's a good buddy of mine, also here in Atlanta, former chief information security officer for the Coca-Cola company. He's now a blue badge Microsoft employee, and he manages our global team of chief security advisors. So, when Jim speaks, I listen. One of the first things that Jim did when he took a CISO role, not talking about any specific company, caveat, cover my posterior, but one of the things he did before he even took the job, I mean, this was part of the negotiation for him coming on, was to have a third party firm of his choosing come in and do an assessment and kind of size up the shop and see where they stood. So if I were to become a CISO somewhere, I would make that part of the onboarding agreement, and I would make sure I had an objective outside third party expert opinion on here are your biggest voids and gaps, and here's what you need to work on first. That kind of a vague, safe, non-juicy answer, but it's the honest truth.
No, but
Nope, it's a
very,
great
very
answer.
logical.
Smart answer, actually.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Love it.
So you guys are a new CISO or CIO at your dream company. What's the first thing you do? Change, implementation. Very first thing. What is it?
For me, I would need to immediately baseline the internal and external infrastructure, all the hosted services like Microsoft 365 and Azure, any integrations with third-party hosts or tools like Okta or Salesforce, everything that impacts the business from a productivity standpoint, everything would need to be mapped out, start to finish, so I have a full understanding of what we have in place, where potential gaps may be, and how the attack surface literally jumps out at you, right? So by looking at all that, you can focus in on so many vulnerabilities in your environment based on past experience, both from consulting and managing different companies and other Microsoft deployments.
So I would take a little different approach, but this is just like the auditor in me, I guess. Typically, I will, or what I would ask for would be, give me your risk framework that you're using, give me your last risk assessment and your last pen test. And I'm going to start there because I want to understand what the company currently views as risks and just have that on the side as I build out my own risk register as I see things as well, and then kind of marry them both to get a solid roadmap in place.
Yeah, we've been doing this question now for 7 or 8 different guests, and it's always amazing how there's a lot of similarities in the answers, but yet there's also that unique to the individual. I'm going to go down this road for this very specific reason. It's just it's one of those head scratchers as far as the question, because it's on the fly. You weren't given this question in advance, but both of you, without hesitation, said I would do this. Let's see, Amron, I'll start with you. So
Yeah.
if you were to take a role at your dream company, Acme Corporation, company of your choice, and you have been tasked with filling the seat of the CISO, what is the first engagement, deployment, the first action that you do in that new role?
I think I would start with obviously start understanding what technology is being used and what our data landscape looks like. I would look at really consolidating everything into the most holistic approach of like a data strategy program possible. So I'm not saying I'm anti best of breed individual platforms, but I've just seen over the years how there are significant gaps caused by that difference in platforms, right? So I think consolidation of everything to mitigate any gaps, any risks, definitely from that information-centric approach like I was talking about. I think I would look to consolidate everything into as few technologies as possible while trying to maintain the fact that all requirements from a data handling standpoint are met, data protection standpoint are met.
No, it's an awesome answer. One that we have not heard yet either. So,
Heard that one. Yeah.
Chris, same question
All
to
right.
you.
Well, I could always just cheat and give the same answer, right? But that'd spoil it, the session.
We'd have to fail you if you do that, I think.
Yeah. So I think for me, the idea of information security is that we're not here to stop the business, but we're here to ensure that the business produces its product it hits its margins, and it does that within risk appetite, right? So for me, it's about building out an information security program that kind of really works with the business strategy. And you know, what is the business? Where are we going over the next few years? What are the key risks? What is our risk appetite? And that's kind of where I start is, you know, as Amrit says, the big thing is getting visibility and gaining those insights. And that, you know, that'd be my next activity is saying to the team, right, guys, I need to get insights. I need to look at, you know, what near misses have we had in the past? You know, what significant regulatory breaches have we had? What significant data breaches have we had in the past, and do that analysis. But I think the first thing for me is structuring that information protection program. And I think, you know, I'm conscious it's a Microsoft podcast, guys. I'm not trying to give a Microsoft answer, honestly, but you guys have done a great job kind of aligning to the kind of correct way I would build out an information protection program, right? An information security program. You give the full end-to-end technology for me to be able to do that. You give me the insights, all the connectors around data for me to be able to do that. And I think, you know, even small tools in M365 like Compliance Manager, Secure Score, that let me measure posture and risk against not just, you know, within my organization, but against my peers, against my competitors within my industry, seeing where I sit. So that's probably the thing for me is kind of how would I shape that program and align it to my technical roadmap and my strategy.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, we've got consolidation and we've got visibility, and I think any CISO would agree that you've got to have those as part of your strategy. Certainly at the beginning, but it's, you know, as your security practice matures, those are two crucial components of having a tightened security posture.
Yep. Yeah. So you have just today, November 2nd, become the new CISO at, pick your favorite company for you, Michigan State, Detroit Lions. That's fine. What is the first move that you would make as the CISO?
Man, retire.
That was not an option, Mark.
You signed a 5-year contract.
Yeah,
I feel for my customers, my CISO partners. I feel for the work that they do, the thankless job that they have. So I think probably the most important thing that you have as a security professional, security leader, is a network, right? A network of people, a network of external thought leaders. So I don't know that I would have a first thing that I would do. Of course, maybe my first thing that I would do is to meet with my leadership team and understand the current kind of landscape that we have in our organization, to kind of initiate a review of our procedures, kind of surfacing all the way from the software that we use, the type of devices that we use, the attack vectors in our organization, the legacy that we have in our organization, all the way to like what is our recovery practices, and when's the last time we practiced that. So for me, I think that would probably be my first thing I would do, is kind of initiate a full review of our security landscape in our organization. And that would likely be done both internally and externally, right? A true, you know, external review of our organization. Because there's a fear a lot of times inside of organizations, especially from an individual contributor standpoint or even a manager, to be the person that comes in and tells the boss that we have a red on the scorecard, right? There's a great book called American Icon. It's written by Bryce Hoffman, and it's about Alan Mulally when he first took the helm at Ford Motor Company. And during all of his executive leadership meetings, all of the vice presidents from all across different engineering parts of the organization would always come in, and everyone had greens on all their scorecard, right? Turns out they were absolutely not green behind the scenes, right? You know, I guess 2 reds don't make a green, right? In most organizations. So in the book, and it kind of talks about, you know, when somebody finally brought a yellow to the table, right? And everybody thought, like, you come in, you tell your boss, like, something's not going right, or I have a problem, or things aren't as perfect as they can be. And maybe it's me, maybe it's my, like, whatever it is, you have to have the courage to say, like, I don't know. When you have new leaders in the organization, sometimes the people are afraid to say, like, hey, there's something wrong here, right? There's something going on. And I just need you to know about this, and I need help on it, right? So that's probably one of the things that I see the most in our security organization, that you see in organizations in general, whether it's a sales organization, whether it's a security organization. So for me as a CISO, you need to make sure that you're building that trust within your team, that they feel like they can come and tell you that there's problems, and trust but verify as well that there's not the problems, because you're going to need to make sure that people feel confident in their job. People feel like they're not going to get fired if they tell you something bad. So again, that review is, to me, super critical. And again, it involves internal and external parties.
Yeah, it's a good answer. And
Perfect answer.
one thing I've noticed, and maybe I'll call it your geekiness a little bit, but you've mentioned hardware in two different fashions over the course of the conversation. You mentioned the NVIDIA chip earlier and bringing security all the way down to the chip level. And then in the hypothetical, you talked about, checking hardware. Do you think, and this is not this is just me off the cuff here, but do you think that hardware gets overlooked when people are talking about security?
Oh yeah. When I first started at Microsoft, there was the Intel bug that everybody had to update their BIOS for, remember? Like, and then you kind of found out that, like, what was that called? There was a hack back in the day. I forget what it was called now. But everyone had to update all the BIOSes on their chips, on their devices. And, like, first off, like, to update the BIOS on a PC, on a laptop, on remote device, like, that is not an easy process to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like sending a Windows update to a device, or making sure they update their iOS devices,
Or just simply be connected to the internet. It's not like
right,
that.
right. So like that hardware is and that's, by the way, on enterprise managed devices, it's not easy. What about unmanaged devices? What about printers? What about IP telephones, cameras? Look at manufacturing customers, shop floor devices, CNC mills, all the different devices that control, manufacturing systems, healthcare endpoints, MRIs and CT scans, and all the legacy endpoints that you have in healthcare. Think about ATMs. There's hardware is absolutely overlooked, and it's terrifying, right? That would be, if I live in Michigan, right? The big three, all these automotive suppliers. It is devastating to think about, like, first off, you shut down a line at one of the big three. It costs you millions of dollars an hour up until you get
The heart of the business.
Heart of their business. And what happens if you're Maersk, right? And you're attacked? What happens if you're a supplier and you're attacked and you shut down? Like, you have to recover your solutions, and those could be, again, they could be persistent. If you think about rootkits, if you think about, like, that type of malware, that type of exploit, it's dangerous, it's scary, but it's something that, there are solutions to help you identify and protect your environments. That you have to think holistically about your solutions. So you have to think holistically. By the way, I didn't even mention energy systems, which scare the crap out of me, because power plants, nuclear power plants, things like that too.
Yeah, that's the question we asked everybody. It was
Sure.
the 10th time. So you just became the CISO at your dream company. You pick whatever company that is. What is your first move, deployment, engagement, whatever it is? What's the first thing you do? And you're probably the perfect person to ask this question to. So
okay, so this is not a like AI question. You're just in general.
No,
you've been hired
just in general. No. Just in
yeah,
general.
I've actually been in this seat both from consulting a new CISO to even a company who doesn't have a CISO and one's coming on. Honestly, the first thing I would do is try to get a state of the land. So you're not going to make change if you don't understand the pros, cons, and what's happening within your org. So typically what I recommend, this is actually in my book as well, is about heat mapping and understanding kind of current state. So heat mapping is going to be understanding what tech you have, what licenses you have, and what's covered and what's not covered against kind of like a generic best practice. And I have like images and slides that I use and I give out to customers that they can have no vendors involved. It's just kind of like, what are you doing for like data security? Are you doing e-discovery and lifecycle management, those kind of things? In your SOC, do you have SIMS or XDR? Do you have a data governance program for end users? Do you have multi-factor EDR? Like non-vendor, just kind of heat map to understand what we have. So first thing is understanding that, and then also understanding the people side and the process. So what is internal, what is outsourced, what is hybrid? Do we have any managed service agreements, et cetera? As well as on top of all of that, do we have an IR program? So if something goes wrong, who do we call right now? How does the IR program work? Like I will try to get all of that kind of in place and heat map it against kind of a general best practice. So immediately if I see any major gaps, especially if like I have compliancy requirements and then we're not meeting that. And I've actually literally had this happen a couple of times where I analyzed somebody's IR agreement and said, you can't use this agreement because you don't have these components and it requires you to have these components and you let that contract die. So if you get owned and you call these people or your cyber insurance is not going to be able to come in, or the IR team is going to charge you more to deploy this tool because you don't have these components. So it's like, again, you got to understand that state of the land, and then you can find initial 90-day low-hanging fruits like, we need to do this because our cyber insurance, and we need to do that because of a gap. That's typically where I start. And then from there, you start thinking proactive strategy. But I go very reactive. Let's understand the state. Let's understand the investments. Let's understand the playbooks. And then from there, I can identify kind of the low, medium, and high tasks for my first 90 days.
That was your first day. What are you going to do on your second day? After you've done all that.
Yeah. That's my first 30 days is that. And then from there, it's taking this information, going to the board and saying, let me give you an update. Here's who I am and here's what I believe it is. Challenge me if you don't think these next 60-day activities make sense or not, and back it up with what I found. Like that's my 90-day plan. 30 days to gather the information and then 60 days to build a plan and then go to the board and have all the assignments for that. But I'm not buying anything. I'm not making changes. I'm trying to understand things for my first 90 days.
Great answer. Yeah, we got one last question. We ask all our guests. So you have just become the CISO at your dream organization. What's your first move, deployment, engagement? You have 30 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. You can think about it a little bit. But we've had some interesting answers.
So there's a really good book out there that basically talks about, from a leader's perspective, don't make a move for 90 days. Like, understand the culture, understand the processes. I can come in and start, like hammering rules down, but there's reasons why these things are the way that they are. And at the end of the day, if I come in, let's say I come into a manufacturing company and implement something and it brings down production and they can't produce whatever it is for 2 or 3 days, I will no longer be the CISO of that organization. And so I would say I would make sure that it's highlighted before I get there that I'm not going to make any changes because I want to learn. I want to learn the company culture. I want to learn who the different team members are. I want to learn the processes. I want to learn the applications. I want to learn why things are done. I need to understand. But once I start doing things, I've had this internal battle with myself for years, coming from the incident response side and from the architecture side. I love the NIST cybersecurity framework. And I've got some really good CISO friends of mine that I've had this debate with, and everybody sees it differently. There's the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. I'm pretty simple. I go left to right. That's how I read stuff. So I'm focusing very much on that identify. I want to know where my assets are. I want to know where my vulnerabilities are. I want to know where my accounts are. I want to know where my risk is. And then I'm focusing on the protect. Now, that's hard, right? Because what I'm basically sacrificing is in the detect and respond stage. I can't do that. So I'm going to have people that are maintaining whatever my EDR, whatever my antivirus is there, however they're doing SIM. But where I'm trying to innovate is I really want to focus on getting, because I don't believe I can really, I'm not going to be able to see all my detections unless I have the right resources and assets covered. So it's kind of a catch-22 anyway. If I've got, servers out here on the internet that don't have any agents on it or not having any telemetry coming off back to me, I'm not going to detect it anyway. So I really need to, for me as a new CISO, after I learn the culture, spend the time, learn, I'm really going to focus on that identify and protect stage. And then it's going to be a little bit longer, but I do feel once I get to that detect and respond stage, my data will be a lot cleaner. My SOC teams will be working a lot better. But this is an internal battle. I can actually argue the detect and respond stage first and then go to identify and protect. But yeah.
I don't think there's a wrong answer, because I can see both sides of that coin very easily, for sure.
No, it's a great answer. Well.